Well, howdy. As Ingrid said, my name's Gerard Kyle from Texas A&M University. The study we're doing here is a study we just finished up on looking at drivers of angler behaviour related to preventing the spread of aquatic invasive species across the western United States. And a couple of species of major concern that are migrating west. This is the infected area of quagga and zebra mussels. Now, the ecological impact of that species is an emerging question, but their impact on Texas, I guess, of energy and this hydropower and water infrastructure is fairly significant, and that has a lot of, obviously, those industries concerned. They're only as big as your thumbnail, but their abundance can really choke up a system. So if anything that's in the water structure, you're going to get plugged up. You see the propeller, and this is a water intake. And so, stick over here. Yeah, all right.
Use a mouse to indicate.
Oh, he's telling me to stick by the. Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. The other species, vegetation's another issue too. It can choke up a lot of waterways and prevent. Take out the oxygen from the system. There's a lot of commercial and recreational pathways or vectors that can aggravate the spread of aquatic invasives. And so there's a program that's broadly on the federal and state level, as well as lake-based, is this Clean, Drain, Dry program. And it's about preventing cleaning your boat, drying it. I'll tell you the behaviours that I'm talking about here. This is a national program, and it's about cleaning the boat, and you can see the kind of things, the activities that they're looking to encourage. And so there's a large messaging campaign that's been ongoing for quite some time about encouraging boaters to do these actions. One of the issues that they're concerned about is compliance, and states vary tremendously, and I'll talk about it in a minute here. We studied 19 states across the western United States, and the way in which states approach the issue varies tremendously. Some are very aggressive toward emphasising this, and others are somewhat laissez-faire. Texas, where I'm from, is probably situated in the middle. So the two broad objectives we had when we conducted this study is look at the social psychological drivers of anglers' behaviour, and the six constructs we looked at there are perceived threat from the species, what it's going to do to the ecosystem. I'll show you how we measured that. The effectiveness of clean, drain, dry, the difficulty of undertaking the behaviours, and then we had three norms related to undertaking behaviour. So a descriptive norm is something where if you encounter a situation, whether it be clean, drain, dry, you see people doing it, there's an expectation that you would do it. An injunctive norm is the kind of the pressure you feel from others that are in the environment to undertake the behaviour, and a personal norm is just your moral obligation to undertake the behaviour. The other part of the study is a broader objective of the study was to look at significant segments and their compliance with clean, drain, dry, and these are the five groups that we looked at. And we explored the variation in adoption of clean, drain, dry across these different user groups. Now, they're not mutually exclusive. People are asked to indicate which activities they primarily use their watercraft for, and so they could select multiple choices here. So the behaviour, they're the four behaviours that we were focused on. We were looking at their compliance over the last 12 months. Perceived threat, and we're looking at four areas of the perceived threat through the health of the state's freshwater lakes and rivers, freshwater recreation, the impact of freshwater recreation in the state, the economy, and the health of fish and wildlife. Perceived effectiveness was again related to those four behaviours. Respondents' perceived effectiveness related to those four behaviours, the difficulty in undertaking those four behaviours, then the descriptive norm related to these four behaviours. Again, do you feel that? Do you agree? I'll show you. I can show you the number of the statements here, but there are four statements related to those perceived behaviours that similarly for injunctive and personal norms. So data collection was a little messy. we kind of used three approaches. Now, for states that were willing to supply us the names and email addresses of their registered boaters and licensed anglers, we can conduct the survey and administer the solicitation to participate. It was an online questionnaire. For other states where there was a little reluctance to hand over that database, which is somewhat of an ask, two things happened. They either conducted the solicitation, we sent them an email link to the questionnaire, and they administered it. Other states just did out an email blast. So in terms of measuring response rates, we're a little challenged given that we don't have control over the administration and solicitation of the questionnaire. And you kind of see that play out in the responses here. For the states that we had large response rates, typically we managed the collection, and that was an email invitation followed by some reminders and follow-ups. Some of the other states that handled it, like Utah and California, they take AIS fairly seriously, and you can see the way they approach the administration of the questionnaire. For other states, I'm not sure whether there was a capacity issue or they were just, I don't know what the story is going on there. And they just sent out an email blast and posted the website, posted the link on their website. In terms of the respondent profile, pretty much tracks boat ownership and licensed angler demographics here. Predominantly male, moderate incomes, aged over the age of 55, and mostly white. But that's fairly consistent with the profile of licensed anglers and boaters in the western US, and particularly I can say that in the context of Texas. The types of boat they own, fairly diverse, mainly ski and wakeboard boats and kayaks and canoes. So the focus of Clean Drain Dry isn't just about motorised watercraft. It also applies to kayaks, canoes, paddleboards, non-motorised boats as well. So what you're going to see is a pattern of behaviour that's consistent when we ask this question on all of those constructs. We asked about, over the past 12 months, have they done these 4 behaviours? And you're going to see this pattern play out in all of these other constructs that we measured. Draining, not a problem. They'll do that quite often. Cleaning the boat, to some extent, they'll do that quite often. However, on things like washing the boat, particularly with a pressure washer or hot water, not so much. And drying the boat and leaving it for a week before taking it to another water body, less likely as well. You're going to see that in terms of their perceived effectiveness. Exactly the same thing again. They see draining and cleaning as being more effective than drying and pressure washing. Similar again in terms of the undertaking of these behaviours, same pattern again. I'll have something to say a little bit more about this. In terms of the descriptive norm, there's a degree of scepticism about others. So we asked them to indicate to the extent to which they believe other boaters are undertaking these behaviours. And there was general, I would call it cynicism about the other boaters' adoption of these behaviours. There was, however, a felt need, and driven by the perception of others, about undertaking these behaviours, a little more so than their cynicism about other boaters undertaking these actions. Oh, wrong direction. In terms of personal norms, there was a personal obligation. They did feel this a need to undertake these behaviours, and likely for this other outcome, that this is going to threaten both the health and economy. So then we looked at variation across these, I call them identity groups, they're use groups. And what you see here in this pattern of results is that generally wake sports participants, wake sport, considered both in terms of effectiveness, the threat, all of these indicators that we had were scored much higher than the rest of the group. Much more ambivalent were hunters. Now, I'll talk a little bit about that. Boating for hunters is a means to an end. So they're going out there to typically waterfowl, whereas many of these other things, boating is part of the experience. So then, in terms of drivers, we looked at how these constructs influence compliance or adoption of these behaviours. And what you see here is that the 2 strongest drivers were the difficulty in application, that's undertaking the behaviours, as well as perceived effectiveness of the behaviours. All of the other factors had a significant effect, but not to that extent. The other thing we see here is that there was variation in both perceived effectiveness and difficulty of application across the 5 boater groups. For perceived effectiveness, we saw that tournament anglers and wakeboarders or wake sports participants had the association between effectiveness and behaviour was strongest, and particularly for wakeboarders, they considered clean drain drive to be the most effective and effective at preventing the spread of AIS. In terms of difficulties effect on adoption, we see that tournament anglers, that association between difficulty and behaviour was almost non-existent, whereas for hunters, it was the biggest effect. It had the strongest impact on their behaviour. So I guess just to wrap up here, we see that consistent pattern of findings with drying and pressure washing being that's the most burdensome, and people not feeling that those activities were most effective. So the pressure washing one is a little tricky because not everyone has access to that pressure washer or a hot water device. Some states will situate these cleaning stations at boat ramps, at public boat ramps. Most states don't because of the cost of undertaking it. But generally, boaters, the respondents considered draining and cleaning to be fairly efficacious. But there was general cynicism about respondents' perceptions of others engaging in this behaviour. Again, with regard to the boating groups, hunters were most ambivalent, and wake sports participants most engaged in the behaviour. This all leads to a sort of a broader. The overall arching goals of the 5 minutes, oh, plenty of time. The broader focus of this study was to look at messaging effects and identifying specific use groups where these messages might be most effective. And so what we did is conduct an experiment where we presented respondents with 20 different images, and they're anchored in different themes, these images, and looking at how that related to people's adoption of clean, drain, dry. And so, just as one example, this is the kind of image that we presented to respondents in the study. Now, the one thing about the efficacy of images is that there's so many variables that can drive it, to artwork, so the one to remove a lot of the noise, we focused primarily in on. Well, I won't leave here, but focused on. I can't drive the mouse either. Where I've got the circle, the message. That's where everything else was pretty much consistent across the 20 messages. It's there we did the manipulation on the treatment. And so what we saw for hunters is that we call this one an ecological gain. By framing the message around this is going to benefit the ecosystem, that shifted the dial in terms of what they thought about how effective this message would be. Anyway, that's an example of where we've sort of taken this line of research and its implications for clean, drain, dry. And thank you very much.
We can make up a little bit of time because we were supposed to finish at 5 past, but I think all the rooms started late, so there might be people dribbling in and out over the next little while. But maybe we could have the next speaker, Braeden Lampard from Ozfish Unlimited. And Braeden's going to talk about River Repair Bus Program and multi-layer community benefit. Just click on your name. Yeah. Thanks, Braeden.
Perfect.
Good to go?
Yep, good to go.
Great.
I'm just going to start off with something. I really want to win that poster, so I'm going to take a selfie and then challenge Vic Fisheries to find a better photo. So everyone smile.
You want us to put our hands up?
Yeah.
Go Bugsy.
So I'm going to put that up on Facebook tonight.
He really wants that.
I do. I reckon it's pretty cool. I like that. So I'm Braeden Lampard. I work for Ozfish Unlimited. I'm a senior program manager, and beside me is Peter Kelly. Peter Kelly is an Ozfish volunteer, and he is also the Ozfisher of the Year for the state of Victoria. So today, Peter and I will be presenting on the river repair bus. So Ozfish Unlimited, our mission is simple but effective. We want to restore fish habitat and support recreational fishers in those actions. So Ozfish has 3 river repair buses, currently have 3 river repair buses, one based in Dubbo since 2018, one based in Madura since 2020, and one based in Moree since 2021. We are looking at expanding our fleet across Australia, so if you are interested, come have a chat to the Ozfish crew about what that would mean to your local community or state. Oops, sorry, I've gone the wrong way. So for those who seen the Trout Unlimited video of who is Trout Unlimited, this is Ozfish Unlimited's version, so it goes for minute 30.
From the smallest of rivers and creeks to our estuaries, lakes and coastal waters, a community gathers to repair, restore and revitalise what has been lost. We are the river keepers, waterway stewards, ocean lovers that want to safeguard our waterways. By restoring habitat in our waterways, we are improving water quality, reducing erosion, reducing the impacts of bushfire, flood and drought, providing shelter for wildlife, reconnecting rivers, supporting native trees and plants and allowing our fish to thrive naturally. Our connection to communities means each project is led by local people, while our science-based approach provides innovation to our conservation efforts. Governments, corporations, communities, together we are collaborating to return our waterways to better health. We empower communities of fishers to come together and give back. Give back to where we live. Give back to the creeks we played in as children. Give back to the rivers we fish in. Give back to the fish we love catching. Give back to country. Give back to Australia's #1 pastime, fishing. Working together through the power of many hands, we show up again and again to create a better, cleaner and healthier recreational fishing future. We are here to get things done. We are Ozfish.
So that gives a bit of an overview of who Ozfish are and what we're trying to achieve. Alright, so the river repair bus history. The idea of a river repair bus was born when a call to action went out to address Dubbo's litter crisis. And the Ozfish Unlimited River Repair Bus now has been tried and tested in Dubbo. On the back of that success, we were able to gain funding to fund the Madura River Repair Bus, and within a short period of time also gain additional funding to fund the Moree River Repair Bus. So it is an initiative that's been developed by Ozfish Unlimited, and now it is a truly unique and successful project. So why is the River Repair Bus important? As a volunteer-based organisation, people are our strength. Our volunteers, without our volunteers, Ozfish wouldn't be nothing, but we would be doing less work. The River Repair Bus allows Ozfish Unlimited to undertake the groundwork that volunteers cannot do regularly. So we want the volunteers going out, getting their hands dirty, planting the trees on the weekend or when they can. The River Repair Bus is able to value add to those projects, undertake additional habitat restoration, additional litter cleanup and additional planting native vegetation. And this project is just another way that Ozfish and our chapters are empowering recreational anglers to work towards our mission, which is a better habitat and better for fishing and a sustainable future for native fish. So the River Repair Bus brings a wide range of demographics together to achieve one goal. These participants have included people from the TAFE, Returned Service Leagues of Australia, Indigenous nations working for the DOL participants, local schools, recreational anglers, and just like-minded individuals who are interested in undertaking restoration projects. So the social benefits for the river repair bus. The river repair bus ticks a trifecta of boxes which recent research has shown suggests lists the happiness of levels and mental health of everyone involved. This happiness is proven to elevate well-being because it involves doing meaningful community-based volunteer work. You are out in the environment, which we all love, and you go out with your friends and family. These activities, facilitated through the river repair bus, meets all the criteria shown to relieve anxiety and reduce life stresses, because in the end we all like being outside and fishing and working in the environment. So what does the river repair bus do? The river repair bus engages with local recreational fishers, provides educational demonstrations and displays at events, improves the development, coordination and participation in restoration projects. Those projects include, as I spoke, litter collection, weed removal, planting native vegetation, improving in-stream habitat and running community events. And also support volunteering and fundraising, and again, being able to go out with your mates. So River Repair Bus, the actions to create a productive fisheries and changing community attitude towards recreational fishing. So again, this slide just is put up just to show the wide range of demographics which are involved in River Repair Bus. So we've got young schools, we've got Indigenous nations, we've got retirees, and we've got people from TAFE. So our key achievements, so again, this is combined over the 3 buses, so Dubbo, Madura and Moree. We've had over 3,000 volunteers actively involved on the River Repair Bus. That has equated to over 10,000 volunteer hours. So these numbers are increasing every week because every week we're out in the field undertaking projects. We've also been able to habitat map over 100k of waterway throughout the basin, so that data is used to influence future restoration projects. We've been able to undertake drought refuge of native fish, so saving native fish in small isolated holes in the 2019 drought. We were also able to go out in a recent flooding and blackwater event throughout the Murray-Darling Basin and save freshwater crayfish and native fish. So some of the more key achievements have been over 20k of willow trees controlled and maintained. We've installed over 200 large woody habitats and rocky reefs. We've been able to install over 100 specialised fish motels, so specific fish motels for small-bodied native fish species, and then fish motels designed specifically for other aquatic species such as yabbies and Murray cod and golden perch. We've been able to plant over 12,000 native vegetation, been able to collect over 30,000 litres of rubbish, and been able to remove over 50 trailer loads of weeds that have been located next to or on the floodplain. So through the Dubbo River Repair Bus and the Madura River Repair Bus, we've also been able to support over 25 people into full-time employment. So as they've come onto the bus and the skills they have learned, they have then gone into and gained full-time employment into their community, which is an amazing result. And that's comment on there. Some of the best part and the best key achievements are the ones that can't be captured, or captured difficultly. because they're the handshakes at the end, they're the conversations that you have. It's that creation of river stewards where you may not see the benefits now, but in 3 years, in 5 years' time, you'll be able to see those benefits, and those benefits will shine. So now Peter will come up and speak on Bottle Bend. So Bottle Bend is a 1,000 hectare? 1,600 hectare floodplain opposite Madura in Victoria. So the river repair bus in Madura has been able to go over to Bottle Bend on a weekly basis and undertake consistent restoration projects. So Peter will be able to speak on that and what he has learnt from a volunteer and what it means from Bottle Bend.
Yep.
Yeah, great, thank you.
And Ray's up the back who drives this river repair bus, and when he picked up all these tyres, he said to me, "Do you know what I'm going to do now?" He took them all to the tip. I said, "No, what are you doing now, Ray?" He said, "I'm going to retire." Persistence. We've heard the story right throughout the day so far, and over the next few days. One of the advantages of people in these community groups and that is a desire to make a change and a desire to make a difference. And persistence is one of those key attitudes that we have. The stakeholder engagement. I love Steve's talk this morning. He put up all those slides, how he's going to engage all those people. How in the hell does he ever do that? That's the challenge for us, is trying to get everyone involved with these projects. Everyone wants their own little niche and their own little bit. We're volunteers trying to work with government agencies. Everyone's got different objectives. The masters of success are those that can combine that. And into the future, I suppose, we're looking at trying to maintain what we've got. The other thing I didn't like about Steve saying was 65-year-olds were old, so that means I'm old. And being able to have new people come into these programs to be able to take on where we're going into the future. So partnerships, it needs to be rewarding, and the stakeholders, broad community benefits. So it's, from my point of view as a volunteer, I'm not just doing it for myself. I've had a long involvement with waterway management, and it's really trying to make sure that one, that government departments have actually still involved with them, other NRM projects and government NRM agencies and that are working with the broader communities, being involved and being able to implement on the ground, because there's so many books and management plans and that being written, and one of my passions was also being able to make sure it hit the ground and was delivered. We've got the dilemma in Victoria and New South Wales, different agencies. One thing Ozfish does, and Ray's, in his role, is working on both sides of the river. So the community love that, coming up to the Murray River and trying to define where the boundary is. Ozfish doesn't have to worry about that. All the other state agencies do. Just the persistence, as I said, there are plenty distractions from the real on-ground outputs, and we're really trying to make sure that we can get out there and make sure that everyone's been involved. Ozfish has commenced some of these inroads and maintain the effort as time progresses. Approvals is another one that's always a challenge and very frustrating for communities, and Ozfish through Braeden and Ray and others around the country are great opportunities for being able to make that happen without the stress for the local community. So that's me done in a nutshell. We go all right there? Finish on time?
Perfect, thank you.
Perfect. Just one last plug. So if you're interested to learn more about what Ozfish Unlimited are doing, we have quite an active social media page and Instagram. We have our media team running around collecting photos, so have a look. And you can also check us out on our website. It has regular updates every once a fortnight about what projects are doing and we're up to, and then also our events. So check us out.
Thank you. Thanks, Braeden and Peter. That was fantastic. Great initiative. I'm looking for Justin Lewis. Is he in the room?
Yep.
Ah, sorry, we had already met before.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So I'll just forward this for you. There we go. You're going to talk about the multifaceted approach to flats conservation. Ah. Right, this is Andrew Norris. Well, we don't want that. It won't let me go back. It's not the right talk. Oh, I don't want to show the whole thing. Sorry. So it was the right name, but maybe that's... could it be under Sean Williamson's talk? Wait, this is not Sean Williamson, but it might be that that's what
So it
goes
was the
around.
right name?
It was the right name, wrong talk.
Well, will it just be a guess?
Wasn't yours either. Right, random talk.
Press forward, or we can go to speakers prep if you want to wait 5 minutes. Well, yeah, you'll have to change it in the back room though, the presentation.
Have you got your tool?
It's on my laptop.
Sorry.
You should have it.
Which one haven't we seen yet?
We're at Justin Lewis now.
And
That
it's
one,
that, and that's
yeah.
wrong, so it could be this one. 100% on the press forward, see if it's this one.
You have to click on Sean first. And presenter mode, yeah.
Nope.
That's yours, isn't it? Yeah. No, that's not it.
Okay, so what was your name again? Sorry.
Justin Lewis.
Do you want to wait 2 minutes and I'll go and ask them what's going on?
Yep. Do you want to do that, or
So what are they going to do?
they're going to just check your tool? So
Okay,
get it.
because I know I uploaded it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
so-
they've just made a mistake.
No, Justin Lewis.
Justin Lewis, yeah. Did anyone come specially for Justin's talk, or are you all going to stay in the room? Yeah.
Thanks, Bryce. Thanks, Bryce.
Sorry. Do you want to swap? I know that's
I don't-
not the
it doesn't
right
matter
thing
to me.
do.
No, it's fine.
Yeah?
Yeah, it works.
I'm just worried that some people who might have come in for the last talk for you might miss out. That's what happens. We'll tell them all. Yeah. If everyone's happy with the swap and we're all going to stay in the room, then Sean can go first and they can get yours sorted.
That's fine. Cool.
Yeah?
Yeah, no worries.
So Sean Williamson going to talk about shark mates, improving recreational fishing of sharks and rays and chimaeras from Monash University. Thank you, and thank you for being flexible.
No, that's okay. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, so my name's Sean Williamson. I'm a research fellow at Monash University and I work with Richard Rayner at Monash. Terry Walker is also an affiliate at Monash University nowadays, but retired from VFA. And this was a project that we worked on in 2019, 2020, and feels a little bit distant to me at this point, so apologies if I'm a bit rusty. But this was a large collaboration and funded by the FRDC, Fisheries Research Development Corporation here in Australia, and was a collaboration with Flinders University, VFA and WRFC10 here in Victoria. So Mike Burgess, who was the CEO of WRFC10 when we ran this project, was quite instrumental in this, and along with Corey Green at VFA as well. So the funding call out for this work from FRDC was, do I click on the mouse or use the?
You can use either or.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Was a call out in response to some unfortunate incidents that were occurring in Adelaide and Port Phillip Bay from around 2012 through into 2017, where there was a series of sort of inhumane incidents with interactions between particularly rays, like the banjo ray or banjo shark that you can see here, or fiddler ray, and also with Port Jackson sharks, particularly around popular fishing piers within Port Phillip Bay. And this obviously negatively impacted the social licence of recreational fishers here in Southern Australia, and FRDC put out a funding call to help address this. But obviously we know in general as well that when sharks and rays or any animal undergoes capture, there's stress involved with that capture event. So catch and release fishing often, obviously, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, you would all know this, involves the struggle and exhaustion that the fish goes through, air exposure and handling, then the release and recovery after the fishing event. And so we know that these fishing capture stresses can have both immediate mortality for the fish, but also can have sublethal impacts. So my background is more as a physiologist at Monash University, and I work a lot on sea turtles, and we've done more so in the last 10 years a lot of research on elasmobranchs as well within the lab, and we see a lot of sublethal impacts of fishing as well. So transgenerational impacts on smaller pup size, for example, depending upon the gear that's used for fishing, or for instance, the capture duration, etc. And now we know that there is also variation within chondrichthyans in their susceptibility or sensitivity to fisheries stress. So we can kind of group species into what we've termed like more sensitive species and less sensitive species. So with chondrichthyans, if you're not aware, there are some that are ram ventilating, so they need to be swimming forward to breathe. These are generally much more sensitive to fisheries stress. They're often, sensitive species are often pelagic as well and live bearing. They have a much higher metabolic rate. They have a larger body size, and they're obviously more sensitive to air exposure. Whereas lower sensitivity species such as the Port Jackson shark that you can see in the photo below are stationary respiring. They're often benthic species, so bottom dwelling species. They're often egg laying with a lower metabolic rate than the more sensitive species. They have smaller body size in general, and they're much more tolerant to air exposure. Now we know from survey work done in Australia that there's a rather high number of sharks and rays that are caught in Australia's recreational fishing activities through the Australian National Recreational Fisheries Survey. And importantly though, the large majority of those fish are released alive. Released, I suppose I should say, to qualify that, and with about 82% of the fish being released. And this fishing pressure has remained relatively stable within Australia over the last few decades, we believe, and there's obviously the latest National Recreational Fisheries Survey data coming out at the moment, which is going to be exciting to compare with. But more, I suppose, more focused survey work that was conducted here in Victoria through VRFish with a ray survey which was conducted in response to those events that were occurring in Port Phillip Bay. So VRFish conducted this survey and found that only around 5% of respondents were specifically targeting rays, skates and guitarfish, which makes sense because they're not commonly targeted as an edible species or something that people are wanting to eat. And importantly, the large majority of respondents were unlikely to keep and retain array, but almost half weren't confident in how to handle array and return it to the water unharmed. And so there was some highly supported strategies that these anglers responded to being in support of in order to help address the issue here in Victoria, and the top one being signage at hotspot piers and jetties where a lot of these problem incidents were occurring. Further education and awareness through extension campaigns, and also a code of conduct for proper handling and release of rays. And so this is where we sort of stepped in 2019 when the project started, and we organised a national workshop in conjunction with Paul Rogers at SARDI in Adelaide, and this was held over in Adelaide at SARDI's facility there, and it involved about 35 participants, and it included people from recreational fishing peak bodies in the southern half of Australia, so from WA, South Australia, Victoria, Tas, government fisheries scientists, people from the conservation sector as well, so Victorian National Parks Association, university shark scientists, and also conservation social scientists, so people working more on the psychology of behaviour change. And we produced a report that's now published on FRDC's website, which you can access and download. And it has a summary of all of the presentations and discussions that were held over that workshop in Adelaide. So just very briefly summarising what we sort of looked at, we came up with a priority list for species within the southern half of Australia to focus on 4 guidelines for recreational fishing of sharks and rays. Hammerhead coming in was ranked at the highest with this weighted ranking score, and then followed by gummy shark, school shark and mako shark, smooth stingray, bronze whaler, eagle ray, fiddler ray and shovel-nosed ray and Port Jackson shark. It's, I suppose one thing to take away from this list is that there's a variation between species that aren't targeted for eating, species that are really not targeted at all, species that are targeted for more of a game fishing perspective as well. So there's quite a mix, but I think it's important to highlight that they were prioritised probably for different reasons, depending upon each respondent's priorities that they had. But the hammerhead having quite high conservation requirements in Australia was obviously prioritised. Gummy shark is very highly targeted in south of Australia, and school shark as well. So it makes sense, I suppose, that those 3 were high priorities. Once we went through this process, once we got further into the workshop, it was decided that prioritising individual species for guidelines was probably getting a bit too complicated for recreational fishing extension campaigns, because it would be potentially too onerous to expect a broader audience to be able to focus on an individual species and how they're going to handle that individual species. So we decided to make our messaging a lot more simpler and try and group species. So we've grouped species into large sharks over 1 metre, small sharks under 1 metre, and then dangerous rays with a poisonous barb and non-dangerous rays, or what we termed as dangerous and non-dangerous. We also outlined best practice techniques, which you'd probably all be relatively familiar with, specifically for elasmobranchs, which is to use circle hooks. If you are targeting elasmobranchs, to use heavy line and gear, obviously reduce the fight time, keep the animal in the water where possible, avoid gaffing in the body, and if you do have to gaff the animal, to preference the lower jaw, obviously not to lift by the tail or squeeze the gills. Also calming the shark by covering the eyes with a smooth, wet and dark cloth. And if you can't remove the hook, try to cut the leader as short as possible and help the recovery if needed by facing the individual into the current, especially if you're fishing from the side of a boat. Obviously try to release the animal as quickly as possible and then reduce exposure to the sun and air. So following the workshop, we then conducted a survey of over 1,000 recreational fishers in southern Australia. This was mostly Victorians, because we were targeting Victorians here through the VR Fish mailing list and also through social media campaigns here in Victoria. We were able to identify knowledge gaps in best practice release techniques. We also surveyed for preferred extension methods. And then from this survey information, we developed extension materials and behaviour change campaign with a marketing agency based here in Victoria and also behavioural scientists at Monash University. From the survey responses, I'm not going to go into too much detail with the survey, but we've just published the final report to FRDC, which has the full survey data within the report and a summary of the survey responses. But importantly, we were able to identify that the use of specific behaviours for different types of sharks, and fishers were keenly aware of this on the whole. And we're also able to identify some potential easy changes, for example, trying to target the increased use of circle hooks or the use of the cloth, for example, to calm the animal if it's landed on deck or on shore on the jetty. So here's, for example, the data for the circle hooks. You can see that there's a fairly even spread between responses of always using them, often, sometimes, rarely, or never. So there's a potential room for improvement here. And then going back, I think, to the first talk in this session as well, in terms of the perception of what others are doing within the fishery, is that there's some scepticism about behaviour of other fishers within this fishery. And about half of the respondents thought that there were poor practices that were being used by other fishers, whether that be with regard to their potential for harm to themselves when dealing with a shark or ray, or also potential for negative outcomes for the sharks and rays when they're released. So I might speed through this a little bit because I realise I'm going a bit... Okay, cool, yeah, I'll go through this. So, yeah, in conclusion from the survey, that one thing I didn't really highlight was that most of the fishers hold positive values towards the sharks and want to do the right thing, although it's not always reflected in their self-reported behaviours. So we created a campaign to then an extension campaign to try and address this and use the information that we had from the workshop and survey. It's called Sharkmates. We have a website. We created a handling guideline with very simple graphics and clear graphics that can be freely downloaded from the website as well, and has been distributed to fishing, tackle and bait shops within Victoria. Here's the website here. It goes through a scroll through in the video, but I'll skip through that. And we also created 6 instructional videos on YouTube, which kind of go through the different types of shark or ray that you might encounter. Also 2 videos about, 1, preparing yourself, and then 2, making sure you have a plan if you catch a shark or ray. We then extended all of this material mostly through social media, but also utilising VR Fishers newsletter and their existing social media. And we created the Sharkmates Instagram and Facebook. It's kind of in its infancy at the moment. In general, we've received some good feedback so far on the campaign, and some key recreational fishers in Victoria have signed on and keen to sign on as well as brand ambassadors. And hopefully over this coming austral summer and shark fishing season, we'll be promoting the campaign more. VR Fish have taken over in terms of trying to promote the campaign through their existing comms people at the moment. And we're also currently advertising for a postgraduate student to undertake a follow-up survey, probably in about 6 months to a year time, in order to look at what impact this campaign may have had within the fishery, and assess the impact. Thanks. Should I quit this?
Thank you. Yeah, it's loaded.
Is it?
Apparently.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. If you
Do I
just
click
click
that?
forward. No,
Oh,
just
right.
click forward and it'll go to the...
Sorry.
There was a few more slides then.
I wasn't sure how the setup was with questions and answers there.
One more. Yeah, and so I think if we go back, I'll grab it if you want.
That one?
Yeah, I think we just have to go there and then go back. Now hopefully it'll come up.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you for...
That's okay, no
yeah.
problem. All right, good afternoon. Do you want me, am I good to go?
You're good to go, but
right.
I'll give you an
Oh, sorry.
quickly
Okay,
because
perfect.
I started before, but I haven't
Okay.
got to finish it. Yeah, so thank you again, Justin, for being flexible and sorting the presentation out. So Justin Lewis, who's a manager with Bonefish and Tarpon Trust, is going to talk about the multifaceted approach to flats conservation in the Bahamas through advocacy and education. Thank you, Justin.
All right, awesome. Good afternoon, everybody. I got a lot to get through, so I'll try to stay within the time limit. So the Bahamas Initiative, our main mission is to identify and protect key bonefish habitats to ensure the future of the recreational fishery. So the Bahamas is a huge area. I'm from the most northern island, Grand Bahama. We extend over 600 miles from top to bottom, and we are very well known for our recreational bonefish fishery, which brings in excess of $169 million annually and employs over 8,000 Bahamians. So it's a very important fishery, and also culturally. So historically, before we got food imports in from the U.S., bonefish used to be our main source of protein. So Bonefish Tarpon Trust, we take a multifaceted approach to spatial management and conservation, not just in the Bahamas, but also Florida, Belize, and Mexico. And first and foremost, it's done through collaboration. You cannot get any conservation work done, and it's been shown all over the world, whether it's terrestrial or marine, without collaboration. So we work very closely with fishing guides, with anglers, with other NGOs, community groups, schools, and the government. And then with the collaboration, we do a lot of science of trying to identify habitat. I'm going to be talking about habitat a lot. And then also, of course, there's always anthropogenic impacts, so we do some habitat restoration where it's necessary. And then all of the work that we do then goes into outreach and education to promote advocacy. And then we leverage conservation, especially with the government, and that is done through money and votes. So that $169 million, we did an economic study back in 2018. We present that information to the government. And then also with our outreach and education work, we're getting out in the public, we're getting out to the schools, and so we are influencing voters. So hopefully that pushes the government to take more priority towards the recreational fishery for bonefish. Habitat, habitat, habitat. You cannot have a healthy fishery without healthy habitats. So I'm going to be talking about that a lot, and that's all that we focus on. All of our science is about how bonefish utilize these habitats, and then we try to get these areas protected. So one of the ways that we try to identify habitat is through tag recapture and acoustic telemetry. We also work closely with anglers and guides, so we collect their ecological knowledge, but we also involve them in all the research that we do. So they're a fundamental part of our research, and so they know exactly what's going on, and then they can go to their MPs and tell them about the work that we're doing and how important that fishery is for them and why it needs to be protected. And the purpose of habitat identification for bonefish in particular is to identify their home ranges, their migration routes, and their spawning sites, and and the connectivity between all those habitats. So one quick example of the habitat identification we're doing, identifying spawning sites. So with the tag recapture work that we've done, we've been able to identify bonefish home ranges. They're very small, less than 1 kilometer in size. They're home bodies. They don't like to go very far. But what we also found is that they'll travel long distances in order to spawn. So this is the island of Abaco. This is in the northern Bahamas, where the pictures of bonefish are, is the area called the Marls. That's a major home range area for adult bonefish, big area for recreational fishing, also a very important area, juvenile habitat area. So what we've done, we've been able to track bonefish on their migration route. From their home ranges, they'll go all the way along the west coast of Abaco from the Marls, down south to that bay down there called Cross Harbor. We've identified a pre-spawning aggregation site down there. And so they'll go down there, they'll do their thing, and then they'll go straight back to their home range. And so this is what a pre-spawning aggregation site looks like. It's a very specific area. The fish use the same site every year. That's about 5,000 bonefish in South Abaco heading offshore to spawn, and we've been able to track them through acoustic telemetry as they move offshore, off the continental drop-off, and going down to at least 400 feet of water where they spawn. So there's several areas, we've identified 9 areas around the Bahamas, and there's lots more that we need to do. So we do a lot of work to try to identify habitats, but also there's restoration work that needs to be done, especially from anthropogenic impacts. So in the Bahamas, one of the main things that we do is creek restoration. So there's a lot of creeks all around the Bahamas, and several of them have been blocked by roads, either just for connectivity between towns, or like this is an old logging road. This is in East Grand Bahama. So this is an area called Snapper Island. That road is over 600 feet long, 3 to 4 feet tall, and that has fragmented that creek system for over 60 years. So you can see on the right side, that's the healthy side, great water flow, good water quality, and biodiversity is good there. And on the other side, the left side, that's the fragmented side. You can see there's been a lot of sedimentation that's occurred. It's filled in over time with sediment, and also allowed mangroves to fill in. Water quality is not good there, and the biodiversity is half that what you'd have on the other side. So what we did, working with our partners, Bahamas National Trust, we were able to put 3 cuts in this causeway, which is allow water flow and fish passage, and we found that there were positive impacts immediately. So we were able to restore tidal flow and fish passage. Right after we opened up these cuts, I counted 15 different species of fish utilizing these cuts, including bonefish, sharks, jacks, snappers, and whatnot. And now also with us opening up these areas, the bonefish guides in these areas can now access them and now are actually catching bonefish in these areas. And we've identified several other creek systems that have been fragmented around the Bahamas that need to be opened up. Mangrove restoration, this is currently our really big project we're doing right now. So in September 2019, we had Hurricane Dorian come through the northern Bahamas. It was the strongest hurricane to ever hit the country. It was sustained winds of 175 miles an hour with gusts up to 220 miles an hour. Absolutely devastated the islands of my island of Grand Bahama and Abaco. Caused billions in dollars, displaced thousands of people, killed hundreds of people, including some close friends of mine. But yeah, so we did some initial surveys working with the University of Alabama, and in Grand Bahama, we lost 73% of our mangroves, it was about 21,000 acres. And in Abaco, they lost 40% of their mangroves, it was about 20,000 acres. So a vast area of mangroves were lost, and not just partial destruction like what would usually happen during a hurricane, but absolutely devastation, just dead mangrove. So this is just a quick example of what happened. This is Brush Key. This is off the east end of Grand Bahama. Beautiful little island that I hold very close to my heart. I fished around there a lot. As you can see, there's frigate birds up top. There's 10 other species of seabirds that utilize that island as their brookeries. We catch bonefish there, permit there. And then this is what it looked like after Hurricane Dorian. Absolutely obliterated. And so that's what the north side and east end of Grand Bahama looks like, and a lot of the west side of Abaco looks like. So we are working with Bahamas National Trust, Friends of the Environment, and a group called MANG, and also collaborating with the Bahamas government and schools all around Grand Bahama and Abaco as part to do the Northern Bahamas Mangrove Restoration Project. So our goal is to hit 100,000 mangroves by the end of 2024. We are doing very targeted planting. We're not just planting wherever there's dead mangroves. We're not trying to replace every mangrove, but we're targeting areas that are very susceptible to erosion, and also areas that had adult mangroves prior, so that in these areas, these plants will grow to adult size and produce propagules and reseed the surrounding areas. So again, we want to kickstart recovery of mangroves in Grand Bahama and Abaco. We want to restore biodiversity, prevent erosion, and really the big thing out of this project is promoting advocacy and educating people about the importance of mangroves, because at least in my country, mangroves historically have been viewed as mosquito-filled, bug-filled wastelands. But now that perception is starting to change with all the education work that we're doing. So whenever we do the plantings, we're always taking students out with us. We're always going to schools, talking to students about its importance. So it's starting to that perception is starting to change. So again, all the work that we do goes into actionable knowledge. So a lot of science that's done, it's great for the purpose of science, like for example, like the gut bacteria of a shark. That's great to know, but what effect does that have on conservation? So all of our work that we do goes directly to impacting conservation. So we do a lot of outreach and education work. All our science goes into outreach and education. So growing up in the Bahamas, we learned nothing about the flats environment. We might learn a little bit about mangroves, might learn a little bit about seagrass, but we never learned about bonefish, tarpon, permit, or how the flats is an interconnected system of different habitats. So what we do is we combine classroom presentations with field trips. We'll take kids out to the flats and we'll have them tagging bonefish. It's a great education tool. They're running around with the nets, they're chasing fish around, they're having a great time. It's controlled chaos. And it exposes these students to the flats environment and anthropogenic impacts that they wouldn't otherwise. And then these students are actually participating in ongoing research. So what we're trying to do is not only hopefully get some kids that want to be future marine scientists, but also more importantly to just be advocates for conservation and preservation. And so to date, that number's incorrect. We actually have reached over 3,000 students around the Bahamas thus far. So going back to habitat protection, all the work that we're doing goes into habitat protection. So the Bahamian government in 2020 agreed to the Caribbean Challenge, which is to protect 20% of the Bahamas marine environment by 2020. So BTT and our collaborators proposed several areas for protection based on the research that we've done and Fisher's knowledge. And so in 2015, we were able to get 5 protected areas and 1 park expansion designated specifically for bonefish, which protected pre-spawning aggregation sites, spawning migration routes, juvenile habitat, and adult habitat. And then recently in July 2021, the Bahamian government designated even more areas encompassing over 5.2 million acres of marine habitat and of 2 minutes. All right, perfect. And so of those 40 areas, 25 were specifically to protect key bonefish habitat. So we have our conservation challenges. We have illegal netting, which is small and that can be dealt with, but that's more enforcement than these, which there's a lot of issues with. But the greatest threat to bonefish in the Bahamas is habitat loss and degradation. I won't speak too much about best landing practices because that's been talked about a lot, so I'll just skip that. But again, bonefishing is a catch and release fishery, and the only way it can be sustainable is if there's best landing practices that are being followed. Management. I know it's been talked about a bit, but for us in the Bahamas, some of our issues are trying to identify the habitat. It takes a lot of resources to do the work that we do. How to convince the government to prioritize what habitat gets protected and what areas get designated, what management groups are going to be in charge of each protected area. And then again, enforcement and compliance I think is a worldwide issue. So moving forward, we're going to continue to work with guides to identify as many pre-spawning aggregation sites as possible. We continue to work with our collaborators in the Bahamian government to restore fragmented creek systems. And then we're going to continue to work with our mangrove restoration project to hit 100,000 mangroves by the end of 2024 and continue to expand our outreach and education program to reach as many students as possible. Yeah, and then again, always about the habitat, try to protect as much habitat as possible moving forward. Quick acknowledgements, we work with so many different groups around the Bahamas, and they have been more than happy to help us, and we couldn't do it without them. So I know I probably don't have any time for questions, but thank you for listening.
We departed from the schedule a little bit because we started late, but I realise that we've only got 3 minutes until the end of the day or the closing of the day. I do, however, want to give people an opportunity to ask questions to the people who spoke. Do you want to just quickly come to the front and just a couple of questions from the audience. Yes, we have one already.
Justin, just in terms of the bonefish, do they the adults come back to their home range? What do you know of the spawn fish? So do they go back to the same area as well, or do you know that at all?
So you mean like, sorry, can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Sorry, we still need the microphone because it's being recorded. So
Okay.
is it on?
So you mean they go back to the same PSAs every year?
Yeah.
Yes, they do. We have so
But the juveniles, after they spawn, so you got, you know.
Oh no, so there's no male homing of that,
Right,
that,
okay.
that we are aware of. We believe it's a function of social learning. So a fish that has recently become sexually mature probably picks up pheromones that adult fish has released and passes by them, follows that fish to that PSA, and then that PSA becomes their spawn. Because that work has been done with Nassau grouper in the Bahamas, where a single big female traveled over 100 kilometers and passed multiple spawning sites to get to her spawning site.
Thanks, Tristan. There's a question at the back, and then there's one at the front here after that. Thank you.
Hi Gerard, thanks for your talk, really interesting. My question is just around follow-up surveys. Did you conduct, as part of your research, like a follow-up study, whether there was any like attitude change at all?
Down the bottom, there's a switch at the bottom, thank you.
No, we haven't done any follow-up surveys, but we have attitudinal questions in the existing survey. Now, in terms of shift, when you say shift in the context of after they receive the message, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we asked that we presented the message and asked them the extent to which they would adopt the 4 behaviours. And you'll see shifts. We had 20 different messages, and they're all effective to some extent, but there wasn't much variation across messages. There wasn't one that jumped out much better than the others, but it's a little more nuanced than that. So in the last slide that I had there, you saw that the ecological gain message was more effective with the hunters. And so it's teasing apart that nuance that where we're at right now, because it's a little more subtle, and different groups will respond to different messages. And that's where we're at right now, is mining it. When we looked across the variation, there was a level of disappointment because we didn't see one message jump off the page. But it's a lot more nuanced than that. It's identifying the subgroups to which these messages are most receptive.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you. There's a question at the front. Thank you. Go on.
Thanks. This is a question for Sean. So, yeah, thanks for your talk. Really enjoyed it. It's quite similar to some stuff we're doing in the UK at the moment. So I wondered, because you were really looking at anglers across the board that might catch sharks and rays, did you separate it out into, anglers who maybe specifically targeted sharks, and did you see differences in terms of their attitudes?
Thanks, it's a good question. We did. So we tried to set up the start of the survey similar to the National Recreational Fishing Survey template that's been used for the last many years in Australia, so that we could then also compare with the national data sets that exist previously. And we're also, within that, able to capture avidity for fishing, also whether they're more likely to be saltwater fishers or estuarine fishers or freshwater fishers, whether they partake in tournaments or whether, those sorts of questions, and demographics, etc. And from that, we're able to see patterns, and as you expect, fishers that are more avid, who generally tend to operate with higher end gear, tended to know a lot more of the best practice to be doing with those individuals. There was still interesting. That's a broad generalisation, though. There was still some interesting things within that, particularly around hook use, often, like what type of hook they were using. So yeah, definitely a lot of interesting data to peel apart in that survey. Yeah.
I shall be reading your report. Thanks.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Braeden and Peter? Yeah? Great.
Is this thing on? Yep. I had to write it down because my memory is shot. But I just wanted to say it was a great program, and I can see a lot of Fish Habitat crew shirts around here, so I think there's a lot of pride that goes into it and a lot to feel proud about. And I was interested to know if you felt that your volunteers had a level of attachment to the rivers that they work on before they started, and whether that developed as their involvement with the repair bus went along.
Yeah, definitely. There'll be probably two parts to this. I can start off with one and I can hand it over to Peter because he is a volunteer, so you can hear it straight from the horse's mouth. But I'll refer back to the floodwaters, the recent Blackwater event. So when the Blackwater come through, there was large-scale fish kills right across the Murray River. My phone lit up. Like, it happened on my birth date, which is the 27th, which is, I remember, because on the 27th and 28th, my phone just lit up with people just saying, what can we do? What can we do? Nothing can be done. What are we going to do about it? And then it was just people they were so concerned that they were seeing native fish perish and freshwater crayfish in their local waterway, and they just really wanted something, like, they just wanted to do something about it. So we were able to rally up our troops and gain the appropriate permits and funding to go out to collect crayfish and freshwater fish. And then we had volunteers donating their time. Like, young families were waking up at 5 a.m. on a Sunday, jumping on the bus. We were working all day, saving fish and crayfish, working in pretty harsh conditions, and then able to take those fish and crayfish back. And then now they're going to be released back into it. So we were able to save that. So it just goes to show, like, that's one example, but it's just, once that happened, there was such a community concern, they just wanted to do something.
And about all I'll add to that is just that opportunity to be able to be involved in the, scratchy a bit there, that opportunity to be involved with all the permits and approvals in place. The passion's probably been there from the same amount of people, but it's engaging those people. From my point of view, a bit older demographic, and I've always had an interest in those areas and worked with government agencies in the past, so wanted to keep that going. But a lot of the ones that Braeden's friends and that, they're a new generation that's coming through that makes me very proud to work with them, that are passionate about these waterways and their fisheries, and just the messages that go out on the social networks is really rewarding to see.
Thanks. I know we've gone 4:05, so unless we have some more burning questions, if we don't, then I'd like to again thank all our speakers, and particularly Justin for being kind about stuffing up your presentation, and Sean for swapping. So please thank all 5 speakers.